We already know you're starting Barkley, McCaffrey, Achane, Mixon, Henry, Kyron, Gibbs, Jefferson, St. Brown, A.J. Brown, Walker, Nico, Jacobs, Puka, Cup, Connor, Montgomery. If you want to rearrange the order of this in whatever way you want, you do you, but those are players that are in your starting lineup regardless of your league format and regardless of your team. Now, going down to tier 3, maybe these are some names we can begin to talk about. With Tyreek Hill, must-start option last week. He was in a clear bounce-back spot. It was an offense that projected to be top 5 in the NFL in total points scored if you're looking at what Las Vegas sportsbooks were telling us. And what sportsbooks are saying now is, yet again, Miami should be a top 5 offense this week going up against New England. And again, I understand why people are upset with Tyreek Hill. He's definitely been nothing close to, the number 1 overall wide receiver, which is what you drafted him to be. But still, if you do look at the games where you've had Tua playing in full, you've had 26, 12, 11 and a half, and 19 fantasy points. So it's not like Tyreek's been a bum by any stretch of the imagination. And I don't know if we get as much volume from Johnny this week as what we had a week ago. Jonathan Taylor sees literally every single snap in his own backfield. There's not another running back that touches the ball. But honestly, it doesn't matter. You can't put Taylor in the top 2 running back tiers this week because if you are looking at, 1, Anthony Richardson lowering the checkdown rate, 2, Anthony Richardson stealing rushing touchdowns, and 3, the brutal matchup you have against the Detroit Lions. Very hard to run against the Lions. Also very hard to go out there and run the ball when you are 8-point dogs. So I think we should expect probably more Anthony Richardson dropbacks. So with JT, it's definitely a spot where you lower expectations, but you still probably have to start him. Going over to Malik Neighbors, it sucks. You lower expectations with how bad the quarterback play is here. I want to remind y'all, I didn't draft Malik Neighbors. I thought he was a really bad pick in round 2 of underdog drafts this year. And to be honest with you, the reason I didn't draft him is because the offense is going to be really bad. You knew he was going to be a top talent, but I didn't know he was going to lead the NFL in targets per game. If you would have told me that, I would have said, okay, actually, he's a great price there in round 2. But yeah, he's at the very top of the NFL in targets per game. So it doesn't matter how bad the offense projects out. He's still somebody you have to get in your lineup. And I know a lot of people are concerned about no Daniel Jones. But the thing is, with DeVito, you have an implied team total about 18.5 points, which is the exact same as what we saw with Daniel Jones under center. So sportsbooks are telling us the offense shouldn't be that much worse. Mike Evans will be our next option. If you're looking at Evans, we got the report early in the week that he is going to be back this weekend. Obviously, first week back, maybe you want to give a little bit of patience. Like we saw Nico Collins his first week back. They told us he was 100%. He played fewer than 50% of the snaps. So I don't necessarily know if we want to rank Mike Evans as a top 2-tier option immediately. Plus, it's a game against the Giants where you probably don't have a ton of Baker dropbacks. But still, I'm starting Evans if I have him. I'm starting DK Metcalf in the Flock League, and you better believe I need a big performance. It's a really good matchup. It's a really good game environment going up against the Arizona Cardinals. It's a spread with only 1 point. You could very easily see this being a situation where the Seahawks ask Geno to drop back 50, 60 times. Now, going over to what we have with CeeDee Lamb, I do want to reiterate, similar to what you have with Malik Neighbors, this is a garbage offense, but Lamb's going to have all the target volume. Now, you do get the reports that you maybe have Brandon Cooks coming back in. I'm assuming that's actually probably not going to be for another week or 2. But nonetheless, really doesn't change the fact that Lamb should have double-digit targets. You're going to have no Ferguson. And it is, an offense that shouldn't have a lot of touchdown upside. Implied team total about 17.5 points. Does project to be a bottom 5 offense in the league this week. Terry McLaurin is in a massive, massive bounce-back spot. With Terry McLaurin here, they are currently projected to score the second most points in the NFL in Washington. While, yes, the spread in this game is about 10 points, we're going to talk about Brian Robinson in just 1 second. You'd assume that they're going to be able to run the ball a ton. I wouldn't be surprised if they use this as a get-right spot with Terry, to be honest. I'm going over to Ladd McConkey. Ladd absolutely blows up this past week. You get the 123 receiving yards, which is a career high. But if you look at all season now for Ladd McConkey, this is a wide receiver that has been at the very top of this Chargers depth chart in terms of the amount of routes that he is running and the amount of targets that he is earning. So I know that Quentin Johnston has had a ton of touchdowns. Honestly, my underdog teams have been very thankful for that. But realistically speaking, the touchdown rate for Johnston is unsustainable. I actually want to be surprised if we see more Ladd touchdowns coming soon. And actually, if you look at the underdog pick'ems that you have this week, you have Ladd McConkey up at higher lower 67.5 receiving yards, which is actually a lot higher than what you have with some of these other players in this same range. I mean, in comparison to Ladd at 67.5 receiving yards, you're actually looking at a player like Mike Evans down simply at higher lower 55.5 receiving yards. So if you were just ranking these guys off underdog projections, Ladd would even be higher than this. Evans would be lower. But honestly, I actually really do like the Mike Evans higher than 55.5 receiving yards. They cleared him early in the week. It's a spot where you have no Godwin. But of course, if you wanted to tell me on that, I would warn you, I miss all my underdog shots. But you can find that link in the description and comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you'll be getting a free Matthew Stafford pick, more than less than half total yard for the Sunday game. And you'll be getting a free team review in the live stream that we're doing every single night. Now, going over to our next player, we are going to be looking at Brian Robinson. Again, the Commanders project to score the second most points in the NFL this week. And this should be a spot where they are able to run the ball consistently, being 10-point favorites here over Dallas. So good matchup, good offense. Robinson, not a massive receiving role, so he is a little more touchdown or bust. But I think this is a safe week to project the touchdown to be there. Aaron Jones will be our next running back. With Aaron Jones, another week removed from the injury that he suffered against the Jags. And this may be a game where they actually have to lean on Jones a little bit more, Akers a little bit less. Now, of course, I understand that Cam Akers does steal a receiving touchdown at the goal line this past week, and Akers does have double-digit touches, which is why Aaron Jones is going to be down here in tier 4. And it will be something to continue to monitor, right? But I think that there is the outside chance that you actually just had the Akers usage, primarily because of what you were looking at with the Aaron Jones injury previously. Now, going over to what we have with J.K. Dobbins. With Dobbins, obviously, we have Gus Edwards coming through and taking some work. That is going to be something that we need to point out. But in reality, Edwards is going to have nothing as a receiver. This is a game where we actually probably should expect to see a considerable amount of Justin Herbert dropbacks. So I think you have a decent amount of Dobbins receiving usage. And even with the limited workload this past week, he still gets there with the 19 fantasy points. It's a great offense. Now, Courtland Sutton will be our next option. With Sutton, I mean, obviously, this is a player that we've made a lot of money avoiding in the past. But, I mean, right now, he is absolutely crushing. You go through and you look at the past month. I mean, Sutton's sitting here averaging about 17, 18 points per game. Not only that, but you're also looking at a situation where he's doing it with volume and not necessarily touchdowns. You've only had one touchdown over the past 40 targets. Bo Nix continues to play better and better and better. Now, of course, this matchup against the Raiders is a decent one, but the issue that you would potentially have here is this is a spot where they could run the ball consistently in Denver. Now, Marvin Harrison Jr. will be our next option. With Harrison, the target volume really hasn't been there. You haven't seen double-digit targets since back in week 3 against the Detroit Lions. But also, it has been a situation where we've actually seen a considerable amount of rushing attempts here in Arizona over the past 2 weeks because it's been an offense that has been absolutely blowing out opponents. So here, as we get maybe a little more of a competitive game environment going against Seattle, I think we could up the overall pass attempts that you have for Kyler Murray. And historically speaking, what we have seen for rookies coming out of the bye week is their target shares in their offenses should improve. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think you can obviously make an argument to have him over Harrison, over Sutton. JSN, back-to-back weeks, double-digit targets. JSN's looked phenomenal. And this past week, he actually leads the team in receptions, targets, and receiving yards. Now, of course, you're looking at a very small sample in comparison to DK Metcalf, where you've had the long history of this type of production. So I'm still going to give Metcalf the edge over JSN, but he looks like he's bridging the gap in a big-time way. And also, we can say that Tyler Lockett has been completely phased out. Now, going over to Isaiah Pacheco, Andy Reid's coming through and saying that Kareem Hunt's not going to get phased out of this offense immediately, really giving high praise for Hunt. Now, of course, I will put a little asterisk on this. While I think that maybe they slow roll Isaiah Pacheco his first week back in, I think he still probably end up starting the dude going up against the Carolina Panthers. It is going to be very important to hear what Reid is saying going into this weekend, what he says on Friday. Obviously, I'll be live streaming on Sunday. I'll be live streaming every single day, giving you updates. DeAndre Swift will be our next back. With Swift, he missed practice on Wednesday, but you get in the limited practice on Thursday. Really want to see him practice on Friday, of course. I would say if Swift misses, Roschon will be a must-start option because Roschon is eating into the receiving usage with Swift. He's also eating into some of these goal line opportunities. So that is going to cap the ceiling for Swift regardless. And it's a really tough matchup you have here going up against the Vikings. Tyrone Tracy will be our last running back in this year. If you're looking at Tracy, again, I want to reiterate, I know that we called him that sell-high candidate after he dropped 23 points on primetime against the Steelers. And just to remind everybody, that was a very good call. You're welcome. But besides that, the reason why you go through and you look to sell high on Tracy after a game where he has 145 rushing yards and the rushing touchdown is underlying this. It's a really bad offense and the receiving usage isn't there. That hasn't changed. You go back over the past month, you have 18 receiving yards for Tyrone Tracy over the last 4 weeks. I mean, are you expecting the Giants to be a significantly better offense? Probably not. So if you're looking at a running back that hasn't had a massive role as a receiver, and at the same time, you're kind of touchdown or bust because you don't have the receiving usage and you're a bad offense, I want to be putting a little bit of hesitation on you. Obviously, he's a rookie running back that's playing phenomenally and it's going to continue to improve. Going over to our next option, we are looking at Zay Flowers. With Flowers, very much up and down. I mean, so far this season, you've seen 1, 2, 3, 4 games with fewer than 10 fantasy points, whereas you're looking at 3 games with more than 20. So obviously you have the highest ceiling, but at the same time, you have seen a very low floor with Zay Flowers. And I think a lot of this has to do with the underlying target volume, where you've seen games with 1, 2, and 4 targets, and you've seen games with 12, 12, 11, and 10. So just not a consistent usage mark in an offense that wants to run the ball, and it is a tough matchup. The one thing that I was concerned with Flowers that looks like it's no longer a concern is Deontay Johnson taking work, where Deontay looks like he's an absolute zero at this point. Deebo Samuel will be our next option. Obviously, Deebo has to fall here. I don't know why Deebo Samuel has been performing this poorly. You look at over the past month, we've seen a high of 12.5 points for Deebo. And you've seen, I don't want to use the game against KC where he leaves immediately, but we see a low of 6.1 this past week. Jennings is absolutely dominating the targets. Jennings has had 11 targets last week, 11 targets the week prior. Now, the thing is, for me personally, I'm going to try to look at the larger sample. Jennings has dominated for 2 weeks now with no Ayuk. We've seen Deebo over years. So I'm going to give Deebo a little bit of the benefit of the doubt in this situation, but probably one more week of Jennings dominance. Then at that point, we probably do need to pivot over to Jennings as wide receiver 1 here. We will have Ramondre Stevenson coming in as a running back that over the past month has had 3 games with at least 20 opportunities, and the low you've seen is 15. So the man's touching the ball. Obviously, the issue is it's not a great offense. You're not really getting big plays. And at the same time, you don't really have a massive receiving role. This matchup against Miami, you are about a touchdown dog, but what we have seen is we've seen sportsbooks actually be much higher on this Patriots offense since you've had Drake May under center. So it is maybe a little bit of a better spot to assume that you get a red zone opportunity for Stevenson. Going over to Jaden Reed, this is a receiver that continues to get there based off of efficiency. Now, at the same time, I do want to point out the fact that you've had 1 game with more than 6 targets. So I keep on saying, oh, Reed's going to sell Reed, it's going to go away. And he keeps on doing it. So I don't know how much longer we can keep on throwing dirt on Jaden Reed's name. And he continues to be one of the most efficient receivers in the entire NFL from a target perspective. Yards per target, fantasy points per target, whatever you want to talk about. Rachaad White will be the next option. With Rachaad White, obviously, over the past month, he has been phenomenal. You're looking at a running back that over the past months, averaging 17, 18 fantasy points per game. Massive role as a receiver. Now, of course, a lot of this has come with touchdowns, which is a little bit concerning because we know touchdowns are going to be extremely volatile. And if we are going through and looking at what we have actually with the usage of Bucky Irving, I think we actually see Bucky Irving continue to expand his role in this offense, which will eat into White. Going over to Devonta Smith, with Smith, I have him in the flock league. I'm starting him. He missed practice on Thursday, so it'll be something to monitor on Friday. From what I've read, it sounds like he's probably going to play. But again, the issue is you've had 1 game with more than 6 targets since he's come back from the concussion. Over the past 6 weeks, you're pretty much averaging about 5 targets a game. He was getting there early based off touchdowns, but since then, you really don't have the touchdowns there for Smith, and if the volume's not, you just have an incredibly low floor. Josh Downs will be our next receiver. Downs has been incredible. Again, if Flacco was under center, I think we would probably have Josh Downs up in the same tier as like Vlad McConkey, Terry McLaurin. Now, the issue is, while Anthony Richardson did look great this past week, realistically speaking, looking at the larger sample, the passing volume should be down here in Indianapolis. This past week, you actually had Michael Pittman Jr. leading the team in targets. Obviously, you can tell by these rankings. I personally expect that you do have Downs as the number one option here at wide receiver. But with Pittman leading the team in targets, I think we can safely say that Pittman may be in a spot to eat into Downs now that he's fully healthy. I know most people are going to be much higher on Chuba Hubbard than we are this week. And you are completely fine to scream at me in the comment section. You do you. But the thing with Chuba Hubbard is it is a really, really tough matchup that you have going up against the Kansas City Chiefs. And obviously, I'm making this ranking under the assumption that we have Jonathan Brooks this week, where we've been told week after week after week at this point, oh, this is the week Jonathan Brooks comes back. This is the week Jonathan Brooks comes into this offense. And every single week I go, oh, okay, well, maybe Jonathan Brooks has a little bit of a receiving role here, and maybe that eats into what we should expect to get from Chuba Hubbard. And we look back and go, oh, okay, never mind. That didn't happen. Hubbard sees 34 touches. So I don't know, but tough matchup if Brooks comes in. While I definitely don't think Brooks is the starter, I do think that Brooks possibly takes a little bit of usage as a receiver. Now, going over to Tony Pollard. With Pollard, I think you can make an argument to actually have him higher than this once we get confirmation that you have no Tajee Spears. Obviously, I'll be updating the rankings on flockfantasy.com every day leading up till Sunday. And if we have no Spears, you probably will see Pollard move back up to a running back that's at least in the tier above this. Because the 3 games with no Spears earlier in the season, you had 89%, 82%, and 86% of the snaps here in Tennessee. But garbage offense, of course. Then our next spot, we are going to be looking at DeAndre Hopkins. With Hopkins, back-to-back really tough matchups against Denver and Buffalo. Obviously, he's not playing a full slate of snaps, which is one of the main concerns that you have here with D-Hop. But it is a decent matchup in terms of the projections that you have here for this Kansas City Chiefs offense, where they have an implied team total about 26.5 points. Javonte Williams will be our next player. With Javonte, honestly, this is a bad ranking. We need to put Jennings ahead of Javonte. Because while Javonte crushes this past week, at the same time, it was only off of 14 opportunities. It's a phenomenal matchup that you have going up against the Raiders, but I think you should be a little concerned about Estime maybe getting something here. Going over to Juwan Jennings, obviously the man has been a beast since you've had no Brandon Ayuk. 11 targets back-to-back weeks. Clearly the number one option here in total fantasy points. Now, again, if I'm comparing him to Deebo Samuel myself, this is just my style. If you don't want to roll with it, you can do you. But I always try to go with the larger sample, and we have seen Deebo Samuel be a relevant receiving option in fantasy for years, where with Jennings, we have seen pretty much 3 games this season. Now, he's 100% trending in the right direction, and I will continue to move him up these rankings as he performs. And like I said, if we get another double-digit target performance from Jennings, he probably will flip ahead of Deebo Samuel. Now, Calvin Ridley will be our next option. With Ridley, I wouldn't be surprised at all if you have double-digit targets. The issue is the offense is going to be significantly worse than what you have in, say, San Francisco. So in that instance, you're probably in a spot in which, I don't know, the touchdown upside is going to be capped just a bit. And we probably should expect that he's a better option in a full PPR format, of course, than what you would see in a half PPR, non-PPR, just given the touchdown rate we should expect. While I think Kareem Hunt is startable this first week with Pacheco coming back in based off what Andy Reid has said so far, again, I do want to reiterate, it will be something that we have to continue to monitor on Friday and as well as Saturday, really all the way up until kickoff, and seeing if we can get any hint of how they are expected to use these 2 running backs. But even if Kareem Hunt only sees 40% of this backfield, based off just the phenomenal matchup you have against Carolina, I could very easily see both Pacheco and Hunt being viable this week. Now, DJ Moore will be our next option. With DJ Moore, the Vikings have given up a decent amount of points to opposing wide receivers. You've seen a little bit of life for Caleb Williams. here specifically with the change with the offensive coordinator. Now, of course, am I going to sit here and say, oh my gosh, this is a new Bears offense, they've turned the corner? No, you have an implied team total of 18 points. The sportsbook's still telling us it's supposed to be a garbage offense, but I think you have some life. Jacoby Myers is going to be in a garbage offense. Brock Bowers, the clear top target. And this is a very tough matchup for wide receiver ones as well for Myers going up against Denver. Jamison Williams, a boom bust option where if the touchdown's there, he's going to be great. If the touchdown's not there, he's going to give you a dud. Now, of course, with that being said, you're playing in what projects out to be the highest scoring offense in the NFL this week. Typically, the Lions are projecting the highest scoring offense in the NFL every single week. So, I mean, if you were ever betting on a boom bust touchdown option, you would want it to be Jamison Williams in the Lions offense. Tank Dell wasn't super exciting with Nico Collins playing less than 50% of the snaps. Here in a matchup against Tennessee where they probably can just run the ball consistently, not that excited about Dell. Bucky Irving has a lot of room to move up in these rankings, where if you look at the underlying usage for Bucky over the past month, he has consistently been seeing about 10 to 15 opportunities a game. The hope, of course, is that we actually see them transition over to the younger, more efficient rookie running back as the season progresses. Now, the coaching staff coming out of the bye week has mentioned, though, that they are looking at Bucky as kind of an option that may have a cap ceiling when it comes to his opportunities. And it does make sense because he is a running back that does weigh less than 200 pounds. Rigo Dowdle shouldn't have a cap on his opportunities. I mean, you could see him easily get to 20 total opportunities in this game against Washington. The issue, of course, is it is a very bad offense and it's a spread of about 10 points. So it would be surprising to see Dallas be able to just run the ball consistently. Jordan Addison, tough matchup. Addison, kind of a touchdown or bust option in a similar way to Jamison Williams. But of course, if we are looking at the difference between Addison and Jamison, Addison is in a much, much worse offense than what you have in Detroit. Going down to our last tier, these are the desperation, throw up a prayer plays. Maybe you have to look at them because you have a bye. Romadunse has actually improved since the bye week. I mean, you have had him sitting here with an average of 7-8 targets a game. Jalen Waddle is a wide receiver that has not had a single performance of 10 or more fantasy points since week 1. It's been a disaster. Xavier Worthy, kind of a touchdown or bust option, not seeing a ton of volume. Keenan Allen, you've had one game this season with double-digit fantasy points. Michael Pittman leads the team in targets this past week, but Josh Downs is just a significantly better option in general. And then Austin Eckler is a running back that this past week gets you the 17 points based off what he does as a receiver. But honestly, if you look at any game that Brian Robinson has played, Eckler has not come close to this kind of receiving volume outside of what we had this past week, of course. But I think that's all I got for you. Again, I really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. If you have not done so already, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel. And if you wanted to tell us on Mike Evans to go higher than 55.5 receiving yards, you can find that link over to Underdog Fantasy in the description as well as the comment section. Promo code FLOCK, you'll get a 50% deposit bonus up to $1,000. Plus, you're going to be getting a free Matthew Stafford pick, more than less than half a total yard for the game on Sunday. And you're going to be getting a free team review in the live stream we're doing every single night. Just make sure you set up an account on flockfantasy.com with the same email address as your account on Underdog Fantasy. That way we're able to go ahead and credit you with that free team review. But I think that's all I got for you. Really do appreciate you. Really hope I was able to help you out in some way here. And really hope we get to see you out in the live stream sometime soon.